How does a legend get forgotten? Ask country music fans about Jimmy C. Newman. Some may remember his hit with Cry Cry Darling. Others may remember his nickname, the Alligator. But here's the amazing thing. Jimmy C. Newman was a beloved member of the Grand Ole Opry for more than 50 years. He was the man who courageously brought the accordion and the fiery spirit of Cajun music to Nashville's biggest stage. So how did a pioneer, a 50-year Opry veteran, fade from memory? This is the story of the keeper of the Cajun flame and how that flame was left to die out in silence. To understand Jimmy C. Newman, you have to understand the world that made him, a world that, to most Americans, was as foreign as another country. He was born Jimmy Eves Newman on August 29, 1927, not in the hills of Tennessee or the plains of Texas, but on a farm in High Point, Louisiana, deep in the heart of Acadiana. This was Cajun country, the descendants of French Acadian exiles who were brutally expelled from Canada by the British in the 18th century. The Cajuns had carved out a life and a vibrant culture in the swamps and prairies of southern Louisiana. They spoke a unique dialect of French. They cooked with spices and techniques all their own, and they made music, a wild, soulful, and deeply emotional sound dominated by the fiddle and the accordion. But in the early 20th century, to be Cajun was to be an outsider in your own country. The dominant Anglo-American culture saw them as different, backward. In schools, children like Jimmy were often punished for speaking their native French. The pressure to assimilate, to shed the very things that made them unique, was immense. The message was clear. To get ahead, you had to leave your heritage behind. Jimmy grew up straddling these two worlds. At home, he was surrounded by the French language and the hypnotic two-step rhythms of Cajun music played at house parties, the fée du dos. But on the radio, he heard a different call. He was mesmerized by the singing cowboys, Gene Autry, Roy Rogers, and the heartbreaking yodel of Jimmy Rogers, the singing brakeman. This was American music. This was the music of success. And like so many ambitious young men of his generation, he saw a path forward, a way out. He decided he was going to be a country singer, just like his heroes. He taught himself guitar, mimicking their sounds, their phrasing, their heartache. For a young man trying to find his place, the Cajun part of him would have to wait. It was a secret to be kept, a flavor to be suppressed in favor of a more palatable, mainstream taste. The first major stop on any aspiring Southern musician's journey in the late 1940s and early 50s wasn't Nashville. It was Shreveport, Louisiana, and a live radio show that billed itself as the Cradle of the Stars, the Louisiana Hayride. It was the scrappier, wilder sibling of the Grand Ole Opry, a place where raw talent could ignite. This is where Hank Williams became a superstar. It's where a young Elvis Presley with his swiveling hips and revolutionary sound first scandalized and electrified a nation. And it was here in 1951 that Jimmy C. Newman got his big break. He wasn't singing about bayous or crawfish yet. He was a pure honky-tonk singer, his voice a powerful, high, lonesome instrument, perfect for tales of love and loss. He poured all the emotion he had into his performances, and the Hayride audience loved him. It was on that stage that he honed his craft, sharing a microphone with giants and future legends. Imagine the pressure and the education of standing in the wings watching Hank Williams hold an audience in the palm of his hand, or feeling the tectonic shift in popular music the first time Elvis took the stage. Jimmy C. Newman's talent was undeniable. In 1953, he signed with Dot Records, a new label founded in Gallatin, Tennessee by Randy Wood that wanted to challenge the big boys like RCA Victor and Decca in the country and rhythm and blues industry. Dot Records focused on releasing cheap, accessible records, and Newman quickly became one of the label's key artists. His early releases with Dot Records were modest successes, consisting mainly of singles like God Was Good to Me and Daydreams, which received local attention but never gained national traction. They reflected the early stages of Newman's career when he was still testing his Cajun voice within the framework of standard country music, with themes of love and rural life. In 1954, however, he recorded a song written by his friend and producer J.D.J. Miller, a major figure in the Louisiana music scene, known for his Crowley studio and his ability to write emotionally charged songs. It was a simple, straightforward plea from a broken heart, called Cry, Cry, Darling. Recorded at Miller's studio before its release on Dot Records, the song featured a simple backing track of acoustic guitar, fiddle, and pedal steel guitar, emphasizing Newman's lead vocals, a warm, quavering baritone with an unadulterated sincerity that evoked pure country pain, unadulterated by the pop and rockabilly elements that were emerging at the time. The song was a lightning bolt in Newman's career. His voice, with its natural vibrato and accent from his Cajun singing experience, was heard on local radio stations in the South, quickly reaching a wider audience thanks to Dot Records' distribution network. Cry Cry Darling was not only a typical heartbroken love ballad, but also represented the transition of country music from the post-World War II era when artists like Hank Williams were dominating with deeply personal stories. The album that the song was released on, give essentially an EP or single, climbed the charts, reaching number 4 on Billboard's country chart in October 1954 and staying there for an incredible 23 weeks, an impressive feat for an emerging artist. This success not only brought strong record sales, but also established Newman as a reliable voice, helping Dot Records solidify its reputation in the industry. Suddenly, the boy from High Point, Louisiana, became a bona fide star with early performances in small theaters and big radio stations, attracting the attention of Nashville producers. And along with a hit came the call that every country singer dreams of. It was from Nashville, the center of the American country music industry. The Grand Ole Opry, the legendary radio show that started in 1925, considered the home of country music with icons like Roy Acuff and Minnie Pearl, wanted Jimmy C. Newman to be its newest member. In 1956, he made his official Opry debut, performing Cry, Cry, Darling and other songs in front of a live audience at the Riemann Auditorium, marking his recognition from the Nashville community. Joining the Opry was not only an honor, but also a strategic turning point. It opened the door to weekly performances, endorsement deals, and national tours, allowing Newman to hone his cultural edges from his soft Cajun accent to his vibrant stage presence to fit seamlessly into the Nashville mold, which prioritized professionalism and commercialism. He did. He achieved his dream of becoming a successful country singer, just like his idols. But once you're inside the castle, you start to notice things. You start to feel the pull of the home you left behind. For Jimmy, standing on that hallowed stage, surrounded by the kings and queens of country music, a quiet thought began to grow. He had given them the sound they wanted. Now he wondered, would they accept the sound that was truly his? Life as an Opry member in the 1950s was a whirlwind. The weekly shows, the endless tours on the road, the constant pressure to produce another hit. Jimmy was living the life he'd always imagined, but there was a creative restlessness brewing beneath the surface. He felt a deep patriotic pride in his Cajun heritage, a world of music and culture that his Nashville audience knew nothing about. He later recalled in an interview, I was a little afraid at first. I didn't know how they'd take it because it was different. That fear was justified. The Nashville sound was becoming more polished, more produced. Adding a wheezing accordion and a French accent to the mix was a commercial risk of the highest order. It was career suicide, according to some. But Jimmy C. Newman had an ace up his sleeve, his wife and lifelong partner, Mae Dare Newman. They met when she was a teenager, in the early 1940s when Newman was a teenager and beginning to pursue his passion for music in rural Louisiana. Mae, born in 1930 to a pure Cajun family in southern Louisiana, was not only his life partner, but also the spiritual and practical foundation for his entire career. They married in 1948 when Newman was 21, and their relationship lasted 66 years. Mae was more than just his wife. She was his confidant, his business partner. He helped manage contracts, tours, and even the 670-acre Singing Hills Ranch in Rutherford County, Tennessee, where they settled near Nashville, and his greatest supporter. In a country music industry where artists often face pressure from Nashville producers to adhere to traditional styles, Mae encouraged him to follow his instincts, to stay true to himself by preserving and incorporating the Cajun elements of his roots. With her support, he decided to delve deeper into incorporating Cajun culture into country music. A bold decision that could have been risky since Nashville was still conservative at the time, favoring bluegrass and honky-tonk over French Louisiana folk elements. Mae's support was not only emotional but also practical. She often accompanied him on stage, helped him maintain a balance between family life and career, assistant, and even participated in promoting his Cajun image, helping to transform Newman from a regular country singer into a cultural icon. He began by cleverly incorporating Cajun-style fiddle playing into his band, Cajun Country, a band formed in the 1950s to reflect his Louisiana roots, with a name that directly evoked his native Cajun country. The band was not only a backing band, but also a vehicle for Newman to experiment with the fusion of Nashville country and Cajun folk music, a revolutionary combination since Cajun music at the time was largely confined to local communities in Louisiana and had not yet been widely embraced on the national stage. He found a brilliant fiddler named Rufus Thibodeau, a legendary Cajun fiddler born in 1938 in Evangeline Parish, Louisiana, whose swinging, syncopated style was radically different from the bluegrass style popular in Nashville, where the fiddle was often played with a straight, fast, smooth Appalachian rhythm. Thibodeau, whose signature Cajun fiddle technique emphasized syncopated notes and swing, inspired by French folk and Zydeco, gave the band a vibrant sound reminiscent of traditional fées du dos. Thibodeau was not only a band member, but also a longtime collaborator, performing with Newman for more than 3 decades and contributing to many of his Cajun recordings, helping to make the Cajun country band a symbol of cultural exchange. Then there was the accordion, played by a man named Shorty LeBlanc, Voris Shorty LeBlanc, born in 1933 in Lake Arthur, Louisiana, a talented accordionist known for his energetic, upbeat playing style, often incorporating rhythm and blues and traditional Cajun elements. The pairing of Thibodeau and LeBlanc on Cajun country not only elevated the quality of the music, but also affirmed Newman's commitment to preserving his Cajun heritage, helping him overcome initial skepticism from Opry producers by proving that the style could appeal to a wider audience. In 1957, he released a song called Effet Doudou, a cautious but meaningful step toward experimenting with the integration of Cajuns into mainstream country music. The title itself was a nod to his roots. Effet Doudou is a Cajun term for traditional Louisiana community dances, where people gather to dance, sing, and play folk music under the moonlight, often in barns or rural backyards. The song, recorded with backing from a Cajun country band, combined a gentle Cajun waltz rhythm with English lyrics and French elements, reflecting Newman's personal journey from High Point, Louisiana to Nashville. It wasn't an immediate hit, it only reached the midpoint of the charts, but it marked a strategic shift for him, gaining him attention from Southern audiences and helping him establish his image as a Cajun country singer. Then in 1961, he went all in with a novelty song written by a Louisiana singer named Floyd Chance. The song was a thrilling tale of a man from the swamp who had the ability to charm alligators. It was called Alligator Man. The song was an explosion of pure, unadulterated joy. Shorty LeBlanc's accordion takes center stage, creating a catchy, funky rhythm over the repeated chorus of "I'm an Alligator Man" from the Louisiana Bayou. It sounded unlike anything else on the radio at the time. While country was being influenced by rock and roll and Chet Atkins's smooth Nashville sound, Alligator Man was refreshing with its Cajun syncopated rhythm, Thibodeau's swinging fiddle, and Newman's soaring, playful vocals. To the surprise of many Nashville executives who were initially concerned that this country style wouldn't sell, Alligator Man became a hit, not only cementing his new identity, but also paving the way for the Cajun-influenced country boom of the 1960s. From that moment on, Jimmy C. Newman became the Alligator Man, a nickname that stuck with his stage persona. He played the role with humor and ingenuity, often bringing a large rubber alligator onto the Opry stage, a simple but effective prop that became an iconic part of his act. Combined with his soaring vocals, light Cajun accent, and fun dance moves, helping him attract young audiences and turn his shows into true entertainment events. He followed that up with hits that were distinctly Cajun, like the impossibly cheerful Diggy Liggy Low, a 1961 plantation record song written by J.D. Miller and based on a Cajun folk tune about a fun date at a Fay Doo Doo. Diggy Liggy Low peaked at number 1, 20 on the country charts, but its longevity lay in its infectiousness. It became one of his signature songs, often played at Cajun parties and festivals, with its lead accordion and sing-along chorus, cementing Newman's status as a bridge between tradition and modernity. He was doing something revolutionary. On the most conservative stage in American music, he was performing songs with French lyrics, celebrating a culture that had been marginalized for generations. He was no longer just a singer, he was an ambassador. He was, as he was later called, the keeper of the Cajun flame. He brought his entire band to the Opry, and their sound was a jolt of energy. Rufus Thibodeau's fiddle could cry with the best of them, but it could also swing like a jazz instrument. The rhythm section laid down a groove that was closer to Louisiana swamp pop than Nashville honky-tonk. For a time, Jimmy C. Newman wasn't just a star, he was a phenomenon, a one-man cultural exchange program broadcast every Saturday night from the heart of Music City. Behind the stage persona of the Alligator Man and the gleam of the nudie suits was a man known for his kindness, his humility, and his unwavering dedication to his family and his music. His marriage to May was a Nashville rarity, a true lifelong partnership that lasted 65 years until his death. She was the one who managed the finances, who booked the tours in the early days, who made sure the business of being Jimmy C. Newman ran smoothly so he could focus on the music. He was quiet, almost shy off stage. In a town filled with oversized egos, Jimmy remained grounded, a constant and reliable presence at the Opry for 5 decades. He saw stars rise and fall, trends come and go, but every weekend he was there, ready to play. One of the most telling and rarely discussed aspects of his career was his relationship with his band. In an industry where backing musicians were often treated as interchangeable parts, Jimmy's band, Cajun Country, was a family. Rufus Thibodeau played fiddle with him for over 30 years. His steel guitarist Bessel Duhon was with him for a similar length of time. This wasn't just a professional arrangement, it was a bond forged over hundreds of thousands of miles on the road, in countless hotel rooms and backstage dressing rooms. They created a unique sound together, a hybrid that was neither pure Nashville nor pure Cajun. It was Cajun country, a genre of their own making. This loyalty created a consistency in his music that was remarkable, but it also perhaps tethered him to a specific sound as the rest of country music moved on. There's a poignant quote from an interview he gave late in life reflecting on his career. He said, "I don't know if I'm a country singer or a Cajun singer. I'm just me." This simple statement reveals the core of his personal struggle and his ultimate triumph. He had spent his early years trying to be a country singer, suppressing his Cajun side. He spent the height of his fame being Nashville's designated Cajun novelty act. But in his own heart, he had integrated the two sides. He was no longer one or the other. He was a seamless blend. A man who had finally found a way to be whole, musically and personally. His joy on stage wasn't an act. It was the profound relief of a man who no longer had to hide. The bright flame that Jimmy C. Newman carried onto the Opry stage burned with incredible intensity through the late 50s and 60s. But flames by their nature eventually consumed their fuel. As the 1970s dawned, the landscape of country music began to shift dramatically. The polished Nashville sound he had once rebelled against was being challenged by the gritty outlaw movement of Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings. Then came the slick country pop crossover acts of the 80s and the neo-traditionalist boom of the 90s, led by superstars like Garth Brooks. With each new wave, the sound that Jimmy had pioneered, his unique blend of Cajun and country, felt more and more like a relic from a bygone era. His hit records dried up. The major label contracts disappeared. But the one thing that didn't disappear was his spot on the Grand Ole Opry. For decades after his last major hit, Jimmy C. Newman remained one of the Opry's most loyal and beloved members. Every week he would put on his suit, walk out onto that stage, and sing Diggy Liggy Low with the same infectious energy he'd had in 1961. This is where the second, quieter act of his life began, and it is in many ways the most poignant part of his story. He became a living piece of history, a familiar face to the Opry faithful, but increasingly a stranger to younger generations of country music fans. He was no longer a star who happened to be on the Opry. He was the Opry. He represented its history, its continuity, its loyalty to its own. But this loyalty came with a quiet, creeping invisibility. He was so much a part of the institution that people began to look right through him. He was the comfortable, familiar opening act, the dependable veteran you could count on to fill a slot. The revolutionary act of bringing an accordion to the Ryman had over time become just another part of the show's comfortable tradition. His historical significance became obscured. He had been the bridge, the ambassador, who introduced a whole culture to mainstream America. But once that introduction was made and other more authentic or more contemporary Louisiana artists crossed that bridge, the man who built it was largely forgotten by the public. He had done his job so well that he had made himself obsolete. In 2000, he was inducted into the Louisiana Music Hall of Fame, a fitting tribute in his home state. In 2006, he celebrated his 50th anniversary as a member of the Grand Ole Opry, an incredible milestone reached by only a handful of artists. He was feted by his peers and celebrated as a legend. But outside the walls of the Opry House, his name barely registered in the public consciousness. He was the keeper of the flame. But as time went on, fewer and fewer people were looking for its light. On a summer day in Nashville, June 21st, 2014, a giant passed away. Jimmy C. Newman, at the age of 86, came to an end. He had been a member of the Grand Ole Opry for an incredible 58 years, a milestone only a handful of legends have achieved. He recorded more than 500 songs, and his voice became part of the tapestry of American music. He left behind a legacy built on sincerity and an unmistakable infectious joy. But instead of the thunderous farewell befitting such a monumental career, his passing felt like a quiet closing of a chapter. In the fast-paced, noisy world of the 21st century news cycle, where celebrity gossip and pop stars dominate the headlines, the death of an 86-year-old country artist whose last hit was decades ago is unlikely to make waves. It was news in Nashville, of course. Country radio stations played his hits, and the Tennessean ran solemn obituaries. In his native Louisiana, it was the loss of a beloved son, a cultural icon. But nationwide, it was just a ripple. The death of the Alligator, a man who was once a household name, barely made a splash. The real reaction, the most profound reaction, was felt in two separate places. The first was in the hallowed halls of the Grand Ole Opry itself. For his Opry family, it was more than the loss of a performer. It was the loss of a link in their history. Backstage that night, there was a heavy silence. Friends like Bill Anderson and Jeannie Seeley, who had shared the stage with him hundreds of times, felt his absence deeply. He was more than just a colleague. He was part of their home. Pete Fisher, the Opry's vice president and general manager at the time, said, "Jimmy's joie de vivre filled the halls of the Grand Ole Opry for more than 50 years. We will miss his smile, his flamboyant stage costumes, and, of course, his unique music." For them, his passing was the fall of a pillar. The second place the loss was felt was in the hearts of a generation of aging fans. For those who grew up listening to his voice on the radio, who danced to his Cajun two-step at fairs and dance halls, the news was like losing a beloved, distant uncle. It was a reminder that their world, a world of simple, heartfelt songs and humble country heroes, was fading. For a younger generation, even country music fans, his name was just an echo, a name they might have heard on old Opry shows. His passing was not a current tragedy, but the loss of a part of history they had never truly known. Jimmy C. Newman's legacy lies not in the charts, but in the doors he opened. He was the first to prove that Cajun music had a rightful place on country music's biggest stage, inspiring generations of artists to come. Though his name may have faded from public view, his quiet dedication helped preserve a unique culture, and it is an achievement that will resonate long after the music has died.